Rebecca.
Hi, Robin. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late. My last interview ran long. Thank you.
Please,
How are
d-
you?
I'm great. It's so nice to meet you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Can you hear me okay as well?
I can. I have to tell
Okay.
you, I'm not in my office because I had really spotty internet this morning. And
Oh
I'm like,
no.
oh, this is no good. So I called my sister up, and I live on Cape Cod and she has a summer house here. And I'm like, can I get into your house, my podcast here? Because my internet is going in and out. I'm like,
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a nightmare. Well,
yeah.
I'm glad you found a place, and I love that you live in Cape Cod. I've never been there, but it's on my bucket list. I'm like an East Coaster at heart.
You're in Toronto, aren't you?
I'm in Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I lived in New York
Yeah.
City and Boston, and I just moved here 2 years ago, and I
Okay.
love it. It's
Oh
wonderful.
wow.
Yeah,
Is it just like, is it more of a vacation town
it
or
is.
no?
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
definitely a vacation place. There's a lot of people who live here year round who are retired. And maybe they
Mm,
go away for like 2 or 3 months in the winter to a Florida home or something like that.
got
And then,
it.
so my town, I'm in Falmouth, there's about 30,000 people year round, and it soars to about 90,000 in the summer.
Wow.
Big summer place because we're right on the ocean.
Oh, I will come there one day. I'm
Yes,
so
I
like,
would love to meet you if you do.
my sister lives in Boston, so I'm like
Yeah,
always trying to like coordinate, like, let's do that. And then let's like drive to somewhere, but I never go for long enough. So I need to like plan it
yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Sounds amazing.
definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Totally. I'm excited to talk about this. This is a topic that I get asked a lot about, that designers are always curious about. SEO is this big thing that everyone's like, should I invest in this? Should I not? So I think this is going to be a really valuable conversation for my
Yeah,
listeners.
yeah. Excellent. And I will
Okay.
do my best to be as clear and simple as possible because it is a very jargony uh industry, and
Yeah.
I don't like being spoken to above my head, so I try never to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to clap and that'll be the beginning of the recording. And then I'll just ask you to just in a few words, just introduce yourself to our audience. I do record an intro, but I do that after we've had our
Yeah.
conversation. So I can kind of speak to parts of the conversation in that.
Yeah.
So just introduce yourself, and then it's a free flowing conversation. I will just kind of ask questions, see where it goes. And then at the end, I do ask my guests to share a nugget of wisdom.
Yes, I know because I listen to your
Okay.
podcast.
Oh, fantastic. Smart woman.
Yes.
So again, like it doesn't have to be something groundbreaking that we didn't talk about at all. Like if we end up talking about it in the episode, you could always just say, bring it back home and like remind everyone. Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
All right, here we go. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Welcome to Resilient by Design, Robin. I'm so excited to have you here and have these like juicy conversations that I know designers are dying to hear about. But before we dive into all of the SEO, etc., why don't you just say hello and introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure, Rebecca, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Robin White. I own RDW Design Studio, and I help interior designers and others in the home industry stop chasing their ideal clientele and start attracting them. And I do that through strategic website design and targeted search solutions. And my goal is to transform how visitors engage with my clients' websites to allow them to step into their next level of success, whatever that is for them.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love it. I also love that it's so interesting because I've talked to lots of marketing people in the past for the podcast, but you are like hyper focused on helping designers and professionals in that space, like in that home industry. How did you end up as this sort of niche of like helping designers? Like, what is your connection to this world?
Yeah, such a good question. I have no connection. That's the truth. It truly comes from, and my clients hate when I say this, my love of watching HGTV. And when I started this business, I worked with a coach because I know working with a coach is a way to fast track everything. And she was like, you need to niche down. When you speak to everyone, you speak to no one, niche down, learn about an industry. I started out in one industry, it wasn't bringing me joy. And I decided to really look inward and figure out what is it that I really enjoy doing. And I started exploring different things and landed on interior designers because when I'm relaxing in the evening, I tend to just gravitate toward, HGTV shows. And I know it is an inaccurate representation of the industry. And now that I understand the industry, I watch it and I'm like, oh no, you cannot do that kitchen for that price. That would never happen.
Right?
But that's truly how I started working with interior designers.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I
Mhm.
love that because I think it's important too. You know, you want to work with someone who understands your field, who gets what you do. And I think sometimes as creatives, we do struggle to find the people who can be that additional support to our business that even really understand the terminology. And I think we're going to
Yes.
talk about that because that's so important with everything that you do. And I think it's this perfect timing because I literally just had a conversation with some designers inside my designer's room. We're talking about marketing, and May is like a marketing month. And we've talked about this idea of where do you invest your money to get in front of your ideal client, right? Like, is it on Instagram? Is it in Facebook ads? Is it in Google ads? Is it in your website? Is it in like a publicist? Is it getting featured? And yes, everything has its time and place to help build your brand, but it's understanding like what is going to move the needle. And what I think is so interesting, and I've recently heard conversations about this with my husband and his clients who are local service providers looking to get in front of local people. So much comes down to search engine optimization, right? Understanding how you are getting in front of those people. And I don't even really know anything about this. So this is why we have you here today.
Mhm.
So why don't we just start with the basics? Like, what is SEO
Mhm.
and why do we need it?
Yes, that's such such a jam-packed question, and I'm so happy to answer it. And I would love to start by explaining what SEO is because I do feel that in the last few years, it's really become this buzzword that's just thrown around. And, I'll have a lot of people talk to me and they're like, well, yeah, I need SEO, I need SEO, but they truly have absolutely no understanding of what it is. So in really simple terms, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And what that means is it is the art and science of getting your website found in organic or free spaces like Google, Yahoo, Bing. Those are search engines. Most of us use Google, so I just tend to default to say Google instead of search engines. But the goals of SEO are really to increase your sales, build awareness around your brand, and generate leads. It's getting people traffic to your website. And just to understand a little bit about how search engines work, which I think is important to know so that you know like why there's so many different parts of SEO and things that go into making it actually work for your website is search engines use computer programs called bots or spiders or web crawlers. You may have heard of one of those terms before. And they come out and they basically crawl the internet. And when they find a new page, they add it to this index. And you can think of this index somewhat like an old fashioned Rolodex of sorts. And then when somebody goes to Google and types in a phrase, interior designer near me, for example, or interior designer in plus a location, the search engines use what's called an algorithm, and that's a computer program. And this algorithm then has a whole bunch of different ranking factors. There are hundreds of different ranking factors that it uses to serve the best results possible to the searcher.
Okay. So sounds very complicated.
It
But
can be
basically,
complicated. Yeah.
you're optimizing your website,
Mhm.
right? This is about your website, not about your Instagram, not about your whatever magazine. It is about optimizing your website so that when people are searching, you appear in their search results. Is that what I'm
Exactly.
understanding?
That's exactly it. And what we all have to remember is Google is a business just like we are. So they want to provide the best and the most relevant search results to the people who are using them as a search engine so that we continue to go back to Google and use them as a search engine and don't go and use Bing or Yahoo. So if you are um, kind of doing something a little, let's say, black hat, not quite acceptable practices on your website, and you're stuffing keywords or hiding keywords. So it's not really relevant to the page, but you're coming up. That's not helping Google serve its customers well. So they're going to start de-ranking you, de-indexing you, moving you further down in the search results. They want to deliver the best and most relevant. And the reason that SEO is important and why it should matter to interior designers is because the more visibility you have, the more chance you have of getting in front of the people who are searching for your services. People are out there right now searching for what you have to offer, and you want to get in front of them so that you have a chance, to get them as
Yeah.
a client. That's
And
the whole
I
point.
just I think it's really important because I think sometimes designers, and we'll get into this, but why it really matters. But I think sometimes we forget that we're servicing a geographical location. And sure, some designers want to work internationally, but let's face it, most of us are servicing our area or select cities, or like maybe the cottage country, or maybe Florida. Like, there might be certain destinations where our clients tend to go. And so that's where we start serving. And so there's if you think about yourself wanting to hire a service in your own city, like how many times have you Googled before you've even bothered asking for a referral from a friend? Like
Mhm.
I do that.
Yep.
We had bed bugs a few years ago. Okay. It's out there. I'm not going to lie. And what did we do? We didn't ask our friends because, oh, I don't want them to know that we have bed bugs. So we Googled, like, I don't know what we were trying different things like bed bug remediation or bed bug extermination Toronto. And we literally picked one of the companies that was one of the top 3 that popped up because let's face it, I do not have time to scroll past the first page of Google.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And you're absolutely right, Rebecca. When it comes down to a local business, people do search online. Yes, referrals, word of mouth, that's a really important part of it too. But generally speaking, when you're looking for something local, you're typing in that service near me or that service and the town. And local search is much easier to rank for than if you're someone like me who is not a local business, but I work virtually across, the US and Canada.
Mm,
It is much harder to rank because if I want to rank for web design for interior designers, I'm competing against everybody else in the world who's trying to rank for that. Whereas if I was trying to rank for web designer in Boston, you can see how now the competition market has decreased drastically to one geographic location.
amazing.
So yeah,
So
so local
do
search is
people do
fantastic.
designers so I love that, and this is something that I think that we need to like start talking more about as designers, but do I'm just thinking because I've never paid anyone to help me with SEO for any of my websites ever. Do you naturally have SEO on your website? Like, does your website naturally rank based on just the information that's on it?
Yes, so that's such a good question. Google is going to index your page and they're going to pull their own sort of phrases out of it that they would rank you for. So let's just give an example. If we have you're in Toronto. Let's say you wanted to optimize your homepage where you want to rank for Toronto interior designer. If we use that keyword phrase in the content in the right places on your website, ideally Google's going to pull that. They're also going to pull interior designer in Toronto. They might pull interior decorator. They might pull just interior design firm Toronto because Google's smart. Google understands synonyms. They're going to get all of that from the content on your site. And then they're going to pull really weird phrases as well that you'll rank for that potentially nobody is ever going to search for. So even if you don't hire someone to help you or work on your SEO yourself or optimize your website, chances are you're ranking for some things on your different pages, even if you haven't done any work for it. Whether you're ranking on page one is another question. And that really comes down to your local market and the competition there. If you're in a place that's got 500 interior designers in a big city, it's going to be a lot harder to rank than if you're in a smaller town with five,
Right.
right?
Right. So that's encouraging to hear. We all naturally, as long as you have a website, you need a website for this, right?
You need a website for this. And
Yeah.
one thing to understand is Google doesn't index the entire website, they index web pages.
Oh,
So every page of
okay.
your website could potentially be indexed, but what is coming up in a search result is actually a specific page of your website.
Hmm.
Then once someone
Okay.
clicks over, they can access your entire website.
So does that then tell us that we need to focus on like one page specifically that we think is most important?
There are certain pages to focus on. The number one page to focus on is your homepage, and that is because Google favors homepages, and they're always almost to index that first. So what I always encourage my clients to do is pick your number one geographical town, city, service area and optimize the homepage for location plus service on the homepage. So for you, Toronto interior design, Toronto interior designer, and we would optimize the homepage for that. Then if you service other towns or let's say suburbs, things like that, that's where we would want to build out location specific pages that are
Hmm.
really built and designed purely for SEO.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you know all this? I'm like listening to you. I'm like taking notes. I'm like, I mean, do we just take your word for it? Do we just trust you that, yep, the homepage and how do you know this? Is there like ways to see? Does this change? Is this like the Instagram algorithm? Like, is Google changing how they index things? Like,
Oh,
talk to
Rebecca,
me about this knowledge.
well, first of all, Google changes its algorithm possibly more than Instagram does, much to everybody's dismay. It's so frustrating, but I think there's over 200 different ranking factors, and will roll out minor and major algorithm changes. They'll call them core updates oftentimes. And one just came out in March and has kind of wreaked havoc with some pages being de indexed. So it's changing constantly, which is why a lot of the time, if SEO is an important part of your marketing strategy. Sometimes having an expert in your back pocket who's working with you on an ongoing basis, who's staying on top of this because it's their job to, the same way it's your job to stay on top of new trends in interior design and paint colors and know, new to the trade vendors for furniture lines, things like that. I stay on top of it. And the reason I got into it, I didn't start out doing SEO, I started out doing web design. And as I started doing it longer and longer, I realized strategy is the most important part. And for me, having a really beautiful, aesthetically pleasing website is very important, but just a pretty website isn't going to get you very far. And I want my
Mm.
clients to have strategic marketing tools when I design and build a website for them. So to me, part of that is making sure that the SEO component is taken care of for them.
Wow. Okay. I'm like, my brain is like firing on a million. I've got like a million questions. I'm like,
Go
where
ahead,
do I
fire
go next?
away.
This is so good. It's so good. I mean, I've always loved marketing. And in fact, when I started this podcast, if you go all the way back to like the first season, the first like 15 episodes, I talk a lot about marketing. And the first course that I did for designers was about marketing because I just find it so interesting.
Mhm.
I don't teach that course anymore because it's changing too much. So I was like, I got to update this like every 3 months. Like, no, no, no.
Mhm.
But I just find it so interesting. And I think this is like such an untapped opportunity for designers. Not a lot of designers are talking about this. And I actually had a designer say to me yesterday, I've been doing some like private coaching with like one-on-one clients. And she said to me that the only money she invested in her business last year was on Google. And we're not here to talk about ads, but it
Mhm.
was the same concept, which was like Google AdWords targeting her local area, and she actually made all that money back just from the projects that she landed through that. And it was, to me, it was like an eye opener, thinking like, oh, here we are, all of us creatives distracted by Instagram
Mhm.
and all the pretty squares, and we just want to have the prettiest Instagram feed, and we want to have all the followers, and we want to be like followed by those people that we look up to. But meanwhile, that's probably not moving the needle the same way your website and Google can.
I totally agree with you. And I think what this really comes down to, Rebecca, is who's your ideal client and where are they? So, if your ideal client is on Instagram, then yes, your Instagram grid should be spot on and you want to spend a lot of time there. For me, I work with interior designers. You're all on Instagram. I have to be on Instagram, right? That's important for me. Probably more so than SEO for my own website.
Right.
But for interior designers, are your clients finding you on Instagram? I mean, that's something that's really important to track. And I would also say the difference between SEO and SEM, so search engine optimization and search engine marketing, which would be like Google ads and Facebook ads,
Mm,
is SEO is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Whereas ads are going to get traffic to your website immediately. SEO is going to take time. That's a
I like that.
huge
It's a
difference.
marathon, not a sprint.
Mhm.
I love that. It's
Yep.
funny. I just interviewed a designer on a podcast, and at the end, her nugget of wisdom was like, I'll read it to you. It was like the same thing. She was like, be kind and patient with your own progress.
Yes.
That applies to your website too,
hmm
right?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And the other thing you have to realize is for both of them, SEO and SEM, what you're doing is trying to get traffic to your website. So let's think about this. If you get 5,000 visitors a month because you're doing SEO or SEM to your website, and one person converts, and let's say a conversion for you is somebody filling out your contact form, that's terrible. And then you really want to look at your website and what's going on there with the design, the user experience, the messaging that is creating this disconnect between all of these eyes that are coming to your website, but nobody's actually converting or taking the action you want them to take. So sometimes 5 visitors a month with 4 people who fill out your contact form is a far better
mm,
statistic.
oh,
Yep.
wow. And
Yep.
I suppose we should be tracking that.
Yes, and you
Right?
can track it in Google Analytics for sure.
Oh
Yep.
God, that's like a whole other
A whole
conversation.
other
It's some
conversation.
I
Exactly.
know, as
Exactly.
most of us as creatives, like tracking numbers, and even our own profitability is like, oh, do I have to look at that spreadsheets? Google
Yes.
Analytics feels like that to me. But anyways,
Yes. It's
if
confusing. It gives you a lot of information, but if you don't have it set up on your website, I highly recommend doing it just so that it's tracking the information now, even if you don't look at it until 3 years from now, at least you've got all the data.
okay, so that's a good tip. So that's something that you would recommend designers do right off the bat. Like get Google Analytics set up for your website, because it's not automatic, correct?
No,
It
so
doesn't
what
just
I would recommend, and I do this for all of my clients when we launch their website, is you want to set up something called Google Search Console, and you want to
okay.
submit your site map to them.
Okay.
What that does is it lets Google know, especially if you're a brand new website, that your website is out there.
Right.
And we can actually request indexing of certain pages. So they can
Hmm.
maybe prioritize those and come out with their little spiders and bots and crawl it faster. Because if a page isn't
Cool.
indexed, it can't show up in search results. If it's not in that
Got it.
Rolodex, we can't find it, right? And then you want to set up Google Analytics. Both of those are free tools. Sometimes there's errors in them. Sometimes they're accurate. Again, they're free. You get what you pay for, but they're really helpful tools. They can show us where there's errors on your website. They can show us statistics about how people are using your website, what's driving traffic to your website. Is Instagram driving traffic to your website? Is
Hmm.
Facebook? So it can just be very useful data to have. And you can now track conversions in Google Analytics. So you can set up a conversion for it to track that is your contact form, for example.
Right.
Yep.
So
It
cool. I
is a
mean,
lot to think
it's a
about.
lot.
We all have our own zones of genius. I'm
Yep.
overwhelmed with picking a paint color. So
Right. And
You
I'm
know,
like, well, that's way easier. I'll
exactly.
leave the SEO web stuff to you.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so let's just get real. So what can people do? Everyone's
Yeah.
listening right now and they're like, okay, I obviously need this. That is clear.
Mhm.
um, are there some things that other than apart from setting up your Google Analytics, but
Mhm.
that's not really helping find people search you, I
No,
don't think.
no, it's not.
What can
The
designers do to rank in a local search?
Yes, the
We kind
number
of
one
mentioned a bit of
thing.
it before, but tell us
Yeah.
again.
So off of your website, the number one thing I would recommend doing immediately, if you have not already, is set up a Google business profile. This is free. And I'm going to guess that most of you already have it. It's connected to Google Maps. And basically, what happens when somebody searches interior designer near me or Toronto interior designer, Google's going to use its regular algorithm, but then it's also going to look at three other factors. It's going to look at relevance, distance, and prominence. And it's going to go through all the Google business profiles and see which ones match up the best. And it's going to pull the top three most relevant ones into what's called a local pack or a three pack. So when you look at a search results page on Google, at the top you have the paid ads and they usually say sponsored. And then
Mhm.
generally the section that comes next is that local pack. So there'll be three business names and a map. That's being pulled directly from your Google business profile. And that comes up
Mm.
before the organic search results where they're showing a web page. So
Okay.
definitely set up a Google business profile. And then the biggest recommendation I can make is take time and optimize it. Answer all of the questions, fill in all of the information, ask for reviews there. I cannot stress the importance of that. Don't ask for reviews on house. Reviews on Google
Yeah.
Business Profile are what are going to help you get in that three pack. And Google, I know we're probably going to talk about this later, but while a lot of SEO is related directly to what happens on your website, there is a component of SEO called off-site, where Google looks at everything that your business is doing off of your website. And the biggest factor there is the Google business profile. You have an
Mm.
opportunity to get reviews there and respond to reviews, which I recommend doing, even if it's a positive review and you're just thanking them. Google, again, wants to show businesses in that local pack who are in business. Because what if you went out of business and you never took down your Google business profile? That's not really the kind of information they want to serve to their customers. So by you responding to reviews, updating your business hours for holidays, posting photos, doing updates, things like that, they know you're an active business that's still around and chances are they're going to serve you.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Woo, that was already a lot of information. So
Yeah. Yeah.
set up a Google business profile.
Mhm.
Love that advice.
And please
Uh,
ask for reviews there. If
okay.
that's
So
all
that's the
you
second
do,
thing.
yeah, that's the
So,
second
and I
most
love that you
important
said
thing.
that because early on in my business, in my interior design firm, I was getting house reviews. Now, that's
Mhm,
when house was cool.
mhm,
House for interior designers is not as cool anymore. I don't know if you've got the memo, but since they purchased Ivy, there's some privacy concerns for
mhm,
designers. And so a lot of us have sort of stayed away from house.
mhm,
But I did get a lot of reviews initially on that I can use on my website, but I was like, I can't organically post a review on Google for my website. And so now I love that you're saying this because you are confirming what I've been telling designers, which is
mhm.
send your clients a link to review you on Google. Don't just get some nice words in an email. You can then pull the words from the Google and put it on your website and put it in all your marketing. So I love that you've
Absolutely.
said that. I did not think about responding. I have never replied to anyone's review.
Mhm.
So I just learned something brand new that I'm going to have to go in now and do
Yeah.
myself.
Yes. And the other thing I would just say is don't listen to this podcast and rush out and send out 20 emails to clients asking them to review you on Google. We want to do things slow and steady because
Mm.
we never want them to sort of see an alarm bell about our business profile
Oh,
and
because it might look spammy.
it could look spammy. So do it, slow and steady. Yeah.
So as long when a project wraps, you send it to the client.
Hmm.
You could probably send it to a handful, knowing that not everyone's going to do it,
Hmm.
right? It
Absolutely.
takes a lot to
Absolutely.
remind people to do reviews.
It
Oh
does.
my
It does.
gosh. Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
I actually have in my email signature, if we've worked together and you've been happy with my service, blah, 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 and there's a link to leave me a Google Business profile review right there. Like, why not?
That's amazing.
Something else I can put in the signature.
I mean, I probably wouldn't do that because if a client's not enjoyed working with me, I don't want
Mhm.
them to leave me a review and I don't want to
Yeah,
make it easy.
true, true. But if somebody leaves you a less than stellar review, you do have the opportunity to respond.
Right. But you can't take it down.
You can contact them to take it down if it violates certain practices. Yes.
Right.
But
Okay.
generally speaking, if it's real and they were not happy, no, you can't.
I mean, I don't have anyone right now, but I know I've had clients over the years where I'm like, yeah, I definitely didn't do the best job with that project. I was inexperienced. They probably weren't happy with me. And I've had clients that in the early years said to me, like, we were disappointed in the experience of working with you. Like, this is no secret. I've shared this on the podcast. So I would probably not ask them to review me on Google because I'd prefer to have 5 stars.
Right. I totally understand. Yeah. So Google
Yeah.
Business Profile, super
Okay.
important. And then the other way to really start showing up in local search, we sort of discussed a little bit earlier, optimizing your homepage for, interior design plus your number one town or city that you service. And then listing out locations that you service that can link off to location specific pages. So I'll use Boston as an example just because that's near where I live. So let's say Boston is my primary service area. My homepage would be interior designer in Boston, for example. And then let's say I service 4 surrounding towns. Let's say it's Newton, Wellesley, Weston, and Brookline. I can't optimize my homepage for 5 different areas. It's too confusing to Google. So we pick the number one area for the homepage, and then we design 4 other pages. So each of them would be interior designer in Brookline, interior designer in Weston, right? So forth and so on. And we want to design that somewhat like a homepage because someone searching interior designer in Weston, that page would show up, not your homepage. That would be how they enter your website.
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? So that's how we can
Okay. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
optimize for
Hold
various
on.
locations.
Hold up. So we
Okay.
need like a homepage basically for every city or town that we serve. But is it visible on our site or are these like hidden pages that
That's
if
a
you
good
just go to
question.
RebeccaHayDesigns.com, you're getting my main homepage. You're not seeing the Rebecca Hay Designs Muskoka webpage, the Rebecca Hay Designs Florida webpage, or the Rebecca Hay Designs, who knows where else I might work.
Right. So I'm going to answer this in sort of 2 different ways. If you have different locations for your business, so you're actually located, let's say, in 5 different geographic areas, then you probably want to have a locations tab in your main menu at the top of the website with a drop down that would link to each of the location pages. When it's more that you have a service area that covers several towns, I don't usually put those in the menu because they don't generally help the user experience of a visitor who's entering through the homepage. However, I would want to have a section on the homepage that's designed beautifully that somehow lists out the different towns that you service, that each town could then be a clickable link to that location page. And the reason is it doesn't really help the visitor who's entering your website through your homepage, but it helps Google when they're crawling your website if something is linked to from the homepage, they're going to find it faster.
Got it.
Okay.
So this is something that you need help with because I can't imagine doing this myself. But this would be a really great way if you are trying to service like your Cape Cod, for example, and you're in Boston and you really want to do more houses in the Cape. Like that would be a great example because it's
Yes.
like its own distinct location and you want more
Mhm.
jobs there.
Yep.
And so that when people are searching like interior designer Cape Cod, it's going to
Mhm.
pop up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Very
So
cool.
I always say to my clients, we have to design first and foremost for people. Google is second. And we really have to think strategically, is SEO and being found online something that's really, really important to you? Or is it something that is not a part of your marketing or
Mm,
awareness strategy? Because if it is important, we need to do things sort of a certain way. We need to have a good amount of words on the page. If I go to an interior designer's homepage and all I see are images and there's actually no words or content, which might look beautiful if you're Kelly Wearstler or Nate Berkus or something. You don't need SEO if you're at that level, but for most of us, we do need to come up in organic search, and a lot that's based on our content, the words. So we have to have
interesting.
words. Yeah,
Oh my God, that's really important to hear, designers. Did you hear that? You do also need words. You need copy on your site, not just pretty pictures.
you do. You
Question
do.
about that. I
Yeah.
feel like what I used to hear was you want to have a key phrase or whatever those words are, like interior designer Toronto, and it needs to be repeated. Is
Mhm.
that still the case? Do you want to repeat it multiple times on the same page?
Yes, you do. And there is
Okay.
no magic number, and I'll explain why. So, yes, there are certain places where the keyword phrase that you're trying to rank for needs to go. It should go in the main headline at as close to the top of the page as possible. You want to have it in another heading, ideally somewhere else lower on the page. And then you want to have it in the actual, I'm going to call it paragraph content. And the number of times it actually shows up is sort of a ratio based on the amount of words on the page. So, for example, let's say you have 100 words on your homepage. We're going to want that keyword phrase to show up way less times than if you have 1,000 words on your page.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
there is no magic number. We have tools that we can use to see if it's enough, things like that. And you can use synonyms and it doesn't need to be exact. So when I was saying, Toronto interior designer or interior designer in Toronto to Google, that's essentially the same keyword phrase. The
Hmm. Okay.
variations can be used. Yep. Yep.
Oh my
So,
gosh, this is so
and then you
interesting.
also want it to show up in ideally your page title and your meta description. So when you see search results on Google, there's usually something that's, I think, blue, and that's your page title. And then there's a couple of maybe a sentence or two underneath it. That's your meta description. That's kind of like your ad text, advertising
Hmm.
text, because that's what somebody might read to decide if they actually want to click over to your website. And ideally, we want to have your keyword phrase in both of those places as well.
So that meta description, who writes that? Is that auto-generated by Meta or is that something that you supply them?
So Google will automatically pull whatever it wants to pull. I do write meta descriptions for my clients in the hopes that Google will choose that to pull.
Ah,
We have no
okay,
control.
clever.
We have no control over what they decide they want to use. Yeah.
Oh my
All we
gosh.
can put
What the
forth is
world
our
we're living in.
best efforts to give them what we want them to take.
Got it.
Yeah.
My gosh. Okay, can we
Yeah.
I know our time is ticking. We've talked about so much already, but I want to make sure that we don't end today without talking about blogging
Yes.
because whenever anyone thinks about SEO, they think, "Oh my god, do I need a blog?" And I've even caught myself saying that like we just redid my website and now I'm like, "Oh man, we did not SEO any of that stuff." So I'm going to look at that. My interior design firm website. And I previously had a blog and it had, I don't know, maybe 20 different blog posts and a lot about its sustainable design, which is one of my pillars in my design business. And with the new iteration of the site, because I'm not regularly creating blogs, I was like, I don't think we need it. But then I was like, oh, shoot, there's all that SEO content in that blog. Do we need a blog? Like, please, Robin, tell us what to do when it comes to blogging.
So I'm just going to say, I hate blogging. I find it to be a chore. So I sympathize and I understand why you may not want to do one or continue one.
Why do I
But
feel like there's a big but coming? Yep, there it
but
is.
the short answer is yes, you do. And here's why. Um, because our websites need to be primarily designed and written for the visitor and to provide a really good user experience and get our messaging across clearly, there's always going to be a lot of pages on our website that we don't try to rank for a keyword for. And what our blog allows us to do is try to rank for those keywords in a blog post. So I think blogging is incredibly important for interior designers, but the caveat is you need to have a clear content strategy. You can't just go throwing up posts. And you really want to have a combination of posts that, let's face it, are probably not going to pull in your ideal client. Things like how to choose kitchen cabinets or the 5 best white paint colors, the things that maybe a DIYer who's looking to do their own kitchen or paint their own living room would be looking for. So they're not necessarily going to bring in the kinds of clients that you want to work with. What they are going to do is send out to Google this cloud of expertise showing that you know all about interior design. You are a trusted, authoritative expert in your field. So there is a time and a place for those kinds of posts, and they are important. But what you also want to think about is, again, this goes back to local SEO and getting in front of your ideal clients. So let's think about one example. How can you get in front of the kind of clients you want to work with one step before they're thinking of hiring an interior designer? And write a blog post about that. So an example is maybe they're building a home in Toronto, and maybe they're looking for best builders in Toronto. So if you've
Mm,
written a blog about the 3
mm,
best home builders in Toronto, because it does relate, you work with builders,
right.
it's adjacent, you have the same kind of client, your blog post is going to come up and they might click on it and then they're going to see your website and see that you're an interior designer and they're going to be like, huh, let's file this away because I'm going to need an interior designer once my home is built. Or maybe
I
they're
mean, to
smart
be
enough to know they
honest,
should bring
I
one
was
on
gonna
while
say
it's being built.
first, they should hire the designer first,
Yes,
but maybe they don't
exactly.
know that yet. So they're looking for builders, and then they see you,
Yes,
and then they have
yes.
a call with you, and you're like, they're great
Hmm.
builders. Hire me first.
Exactly. But things like
Whoa, that
that,
just blew my mind.
so you really want to have a blog strategy. You want to be thinking like, what's the value of the post and who is it going to attract? And you want to have a combination. And then another example, let's say that you are a kitchen and bath designer and you offer, full service interior design. So we have a services page that talks about your full service interior design. But it's not really appropriate to try to rank for kitchen designer or bath designer there because we want to use the phrase kitchen and bath because that's what you use in the industry, right? But when you think about it, and this is where knowing who your ideal client is and understanding them and how they search for things, if I was looking to have my bathroom redone, I would not search for bath because me being outside of the industry, bath is the actual bathtub, not the room. So while kitchen and
Mhm.
bath is what's used in the interior design industry, we might want to have a blog post all about kitchen design to cover that. And we might want to have a blog post all about, excuse me, bathroom design to cover that. And there isn't really another place on the website where trying to rank for that sort of keyword fits in logically. So that's where blogging can be really helpful.
So, do we have to post a blog every week, every month, once a year?
So
Is it one of those like more the better?
um I'm going to say consistency is better than more. And I'm going to say high quality content is better than more content. So you don't really want to just be spewing out what everyone else is spewing out. You really want it to be thoughtful, well written, provide a lot of value. So think about what is actually doable for you. Let's say it's one post a month. It's 12 posts a year to write. You can hire out the writing. You can hire a copywriter. But that doesn't seem that unmanageable. Or maybe it's
Mhm.
one post every other month and it's 6 posts a year. But what I always recommend is sort of, I like to plan out 6 months of content creation for my clients at a time. I don't like to do more than that because the algorithm is always changing. I want to see how the posts are doing in the analytics
Mhm.
before we decide that we want to keep moving forward in this strain, let's say. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So you
Mhm.
will actually look at the analytics and see if that blog post is getting any traction. Like,
Mhm.
is anyone clicking on it? How long
Yep.
are they staying on that page? Let's
Mhm.
say that type of thing. Like, has it showed up in
Absolutely.
Google?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Is
So
it
it's not
driving
just
any
like
traffic
write
to
it
the
and
website? It's not just writing it. You want to really track it, analyze it, and then maybe it's just a matter of adding another section to it, changing headings, something like that. So a lot of times what I do with my clients is we'll look at their current blog and we'll work on fixing up old blog posts and we can republish
right.
them because Google looks at recency. So it's not all about
Hmm.
constant new creation. It can be taking what you already have and making it better.
So I could take all the old blog posts that are no longer on my site because the
Mhm.
other site is now deactivated.
Yes.
I could take that content and slowly like update it,
Hmm.
obviously, and then I could slowly release those old blogs as
Yep.
new blogs on my new site. And that
Yes.
would actually probably be better than having had those old ones sitting there, or not necessarily. I may have messed up.
Not necessarily. We could talk afterwards.
Yeah. Anyways,
Because I don't
that's
want to get too
fine.
technical. But yes,
I get it.
the
Yeah.
the long and short of it is yes, blogging is fantastic if you're able to commit to it. It can really help. And the other thing about it, let's think about this. It's giving you content that you can repurpose in lots of other places. From that one blog post, you might be able to get 5 or 8 social media posts, right? Because we're all on social
Mhm.
media and we're all struggling to create content there. If you do videos on YouTube, you could do a little short video about a little bit of the blog post and then say, to learn everything, go to my
Mhm.
website and read the blog. So you're driving traffic to your website. So
Mhm.
you can repurpose it in an email newsletter to your email list. So there's lots of different ways you can take this one blog and repurpose the content.
So one question, personal question, not
Mhm,
personal. It's not about your personal life. It's about from my website. So
mhm,
I have two websites. My second site, that's a whole other question we could dive into, but we recently decided that for the podcast
mhm.
pages on my site, that it would probably be smart for SEO. And this is not based on any expert. This is just my team and I being like, I think we should do this. Other people do this, is to take the transcription of the episode, like we're having this conversation today, and putting that on the page of the podcast episode.
Mhm. That lives
Is there
on your
value
website.
that lives on my website? Is there
Yeah.
value to that? Like it's a whole lot of words.
I think there can be value to it depending on how the podcast pages are set up. So if they truly live on your website and it's content that you're adding to your website, I think that could be a wonderful way to optimize for keywords related to that blog post for sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't, I think I might need to do a deep dive there because I don't know what we're doing, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I
It's
think
not my area.
that could be a really good way to create content for you.
Right. Well, I'm
Mhm.
like, here we are recording these episodes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like they just live on Spotify or iTunes. Like, come on,
Right.
and on YouTube. This is also on YouTube, but
Mhm.
like there's got to be a better way to like drive traffic to my website.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
anyways,
The
we're
other thing
exploring
that
that.
I think could be interesting and it's probably doable, if there's a way to actually search through the episodes on your website, because we can't really do that on Apple or Spotify. So if you could break down the episodes into different buckets. So let's say there's a marketing bucket and a process bucket, something like that. So that
Right.
visitors to your website can search, oh, I want to see all the episodes that talk about process. And then those all come up and they can scroll through and see which one they want to
I
listen
wonder how
to.
to do that.
I think
Right.
that could be real from a user experience standpoint. That could be really
Mhm.
cool because then we're not just scrolling through um, by date that it was
It could be
published,
by
right?
category.
By
Yeah.
category. Yep.
So we have something similar inside Designers Room, which is my membership. People can search the podcast, meaning they can just type in like SEO tactics, and then any conversation I've
Mm.
had will pop up with the
Yep.
timestamp, so they can go and watch and of the podcast. That's just for my members, but I can see the value, and I don't know how to set it up. I'd have to figure that out.
Hmm.
How on the website if you could search by category, right?
Yep.
And
It
maybe
could be
that
really
maybe
cool.
we need to tag them, and there's probably a way to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's true
Yep.
because you can't really search podcasts.
Right. Right.
That's a good idea.
And
I
everybody has
think.
different things that they're really interested in learning about when they're listening to podcasts. So unless it's one of
Mhm.
your regular listeners like I am, where, we know when a new episode comes out and we listen to it. But for someone who's kind of new, who's just like, oh, I really want to learn about SEO, you would want all
Yeah,
of those to come up and you would know to look under marketing for that.
right. Ooh, good idea.
Thank
Okay,
you.
amazing. Can you help me execute that?
Maybe we can definitely chat about it for sure.
Because I'm not doing that myself. I
Of
know
course
where
you're
my
not.
expertise lie.
You have too many other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this conversation has been so wonderful, Robin. Okay, I need to hear your nugget. Before our time wraps together, what last nugget of wisdom? I mean, you have shared so many nuggets, and I'm sure the designers listening are like, minds are exploding, and they're like, I wish I had a pen and paper. So, guys, if you're listening and you feel that way, just listen to it again when you have some quiet time at your desk or with a cup of coffee and like write down all these things. These are so actionable. And I love that. Thank you, Robin, for sharing it.
You're
But what is
welcome.
your last nugget?
So, my last nugget, I'm going to say don't look for website inspiration from your industry. And what I mean by
Ooh,
that is also dare to stand out and be unique. I see so many designer websites and they all look the same and they all say the same thing. And what's going to make a client hire you is what's unique about you. And I think it's fear that holds us back from truly standing out and showing up as we are. But when you can be authentic to yourself and share your personality and show up and have that come across in your website, you're going to stand out. People are going to remember it. So don't look for inspiration in your industry.
I love that advice. I think that is so impactful because, like, how many of us see another designer? Oh, they've launched their new site. Oh, wow, look at it. So beautiful.
Hmm.
I mean, I've been guilty of that. I just redid
Yeah.
my website and I was like, okay, well, like, what's everyone else doing? Oh,
Hmm.
I really like how so and so did that. Let's do that too. I
Yep.
mean, it's my own work and my own copy and all that, but it's very similar aesthetic and layout. And it's true. Like, that is what, and I talk about this all the time. Like, clients are hiring you for you, but
Mhm.
also what is your differentiator? And your
Yes.
personality is obviously one of them. And
Yes.
so leaning into that doesn't mean you have to be swearing and like, crazy on your
Mhm.
site, but infuse it in the language and the visual. I love that. That's really great
Yes.
advice.
Yeah, show your
I love that.
personality. I always say give information about you on your homepage, like fun facts, or make a mood board and show a whole bunch of photographs of things you love, but something that makes you human and not just this, image on another website, right?
Right. Beautiful
That,
picture. And
yeah,
here's, yeah,
that someone might be able to connect to, whatever that might be. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I love that. I'm now going to go redo my entire website. Thank you very
No, no,
much.
no, I'm sure not.
Quick question, and I do want you to share how people can work with you and find and follow you. But do you do, would you do like an audit? Like, say somebody here listening today is like, I don't need a new website. I already
Mhm.
have a website. Like, could you help someone? Could you look at their website and say, here's where you're messing up, or here's what's working for you, or here's where I see an opportunity? Like, do you do that? Do you offer that service?
So that's a really good question. For SEO, start everything with a thorough SEO audit. That's always the first step in working together. And it's about a 40 to 50 page document. And then that we use as a roadmap for me to either move forward with you or for you to take and fix things on your own. So for SEO, yes,
Got
there's
it.
definitely an audit. For web design, I do offer website consulting. So that is really, it's an hour and a half on Zoom where you can ask me any questions you have about your website. If you don't have questions, you can say, let's go over my homepage and I can go through and audit it for you. But that would be live on Zoom and then you can record it and refer back to it.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you also do the whole kit and caboodle.
Yep, I
Like,
do
do you
custom website
actually,
design.
okay.
Yep, and I have a graphic designer and a copywriter on my team, so we can handle everything all in-house for you. And then I also do website template customization. So it's different than just buying like a $200 template online. I have 6 templates that I've designed specifically for interior designers in the home industry. You pick one, you send me all of your content, and I upload and format everything into the template for you and launch it. So you don't have to deal with any of the technical website-y stuff.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And if somebody has a website already
Mhm.
that they want your help with, can you work on different platforms like WordPress, Squarespace, Showit, that type of thing?
Good question. So for SEO, I can work on many different platforms. For design, I specialize just in WordPress. So I can
Okay.
do consulting on any platform, but you would actually take my suggestions and implement them yourself. So
Okay.
unless it's
That's great. That's
WordPress.
helpful.
Yeah.
It's super helpful to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been amazing. Where can everyone find and follow you?
Sure. So my website is rdwdesign.com.
Oh, sorry. Repeat
That's
that.
okay. So
Where
my
can everyone
website,
find?
so my website is rdwdesignstudio.com. And I'm very active on Instagram and it's RDW Design Studio. And I post lots of helpful tips. So that's a really good place to learn a lot.
I love that. RD Design Studio. That's super easy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being my guest today. I know you're going to get a lot of designers calling you, reaching out to you, DMing you, saying help, because this has been very eye opening, especially for me. I'm like, my brain is firing on all this. I'm like, oh my God, this, and then I got to change that. And like, what about this? And I got to hire her to do this thing. And like, oh my gosh, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun chatting with you.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. There were so many tangible nuggets that you hopefully caught that you could immediately implement in your website, such as setting up your Google Analytics, setting up a Google business profile, asking for Google reviews from your clients. Like, this is such a big one. It's going to help you in all the other marketing, in addition to helping your ranking on Google. And I love how she talks about that nugget of wisdom at the end, which is don't just look at your competition and copy what they're doing when it comes to your website. Find what's going to make you unique and show your personality. I'm really excited to have connected with Robin. Her expertise is truly so helpful. Let's be honest. I immediately asked her a million questions after we stopped recording about my website, what I could do, and the challenges that I've had. And she was so helpful and so forthcoming with the information. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Please head on over to Robin's Instagram. Let her know you heard her here. And of course, don't forget to review the podcast. We'd love to see some new 5-star reviews on iTunes. Leave a comment. Let everybody know what it is about this podcast that you're enjoying. And of course, if you think I should have Robin back to dive in even more into this stuff, send me a DM on Instagram and let me know. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you soon.